Welcome to Who Are You? Uninterrupted with Felicia Hatcher. Let's get started.
Do you know that all of your dreams are actually not created equal? I have had a really fascinating start to the year, but this last week, and even this week has been really interesting. And so I want to share some lessons from a really jam-packed, interesting, super cool week. So I'm in San Diego at a conference that's been amazing to our entrepreneurs. Really, really, really good room. And so go look at my stories. You'll see like who was there. And learn some really interesting lessons from the people that were in the room. And then simultaneously, I was also listening. Well, in the morning, waking up, I was listening to another mastermind conference I was supposed to be at if I wasn't coming here. So it was just kind of when something like two things seemingly do not like correlate, but like they just kind of flow into some lessons that I needed to hear, learn, like all the things. So I'm gonna share that with y'all. And so all of your dreams are not created equal. And I'm gonna come back to like how that all came together. But like that was like the first quote I heard. And so the first thing that I heard was, I think, saying that probably all of us grew up hearing, right? And so not only do reap what you sow, but reap you cannot expect to sow when you reap, right? And I had just never heard that before. And it was like this lesson on patience, right? Like you're going to reap what you sow, right? So the things that you put in are the things that you can at some point extract out, right? But you cannot expect it to happen immediately. And I'm on an interesting personal journey, professional journey, that I'll explain more about at a later time. And then also just like a mentee of mine who has been traveling with me and just kind of seeing this other journey, personal journey for him. And so things are kind of clicking on all three in moments in which I want things to happen right away, and that's not how it works. Um, Him also wanting things to happen right away, and that's also not how it works. So it's been an interesting thing, right? And so when he said that, and then it started making me think about like a conversation I had yesterday, a really interesting conversation. I'm not going to go into it because it could have went very sideways. But just talking about creating opportunities for others, and he's like, I'm not going to take away. I won't. It's not about not going to take away opportunities for this group, but I really want to focus on this. And so I'm trying to be sensitive. I'm like, well, nothing is about taking away anything from anyone when you're talking about helping people. Like everyone is able to benefit when we are helping the people that get the least amount of benefits, and absolutely should be able to play in like this big arena of opportunities and space, right? I'll sum it up nicely that way. And so then what I'm to tell him is like this conversation I had with Myron, who's been a mentor of mine for I don't know, 2 years, going on 3 years, might have been 3 years. And I was telling him, like, the pie is big enough for everyone to get a slice. I believe that. I wholeheartedly believe that, because I don't believe in like a small pie, like an infinite pie, right? Like the pie is literally big enough for everyone to get a slice. We've all said it. And I'm a big person, like I'm a lover of language and very particular about words, but words have meaning, right? And what he said to me was like, Felicia, the pie is actually not big enough for everyone to get a slice. I'm like, what are you talking about? Because I believe in an infinite pie. There's just this massive pie of opportunity where like, yes, you have like creative competition, but like no one can take away from you what is yours. I truly wholeheartedly believe that, right? And then, what you put in is what you get out. So like you absolutely should be able to extract and be well fed from the things that you do. You have to, you should be. There should be no question around that. Anyways, and so what he said was like, Felicia, the pie is not big enough for everyone to get a slice. It's just not. I was like, what you talking about, Willis, right? And what he said is like, you should be striving to eat from the garden as opposed to a slice of the pie. Because when you eat your slice of the pie, like you're well fed, but like it doesn't do anything for anyone else. And so it's not about being selfish. It's just being short-sighted about what the real big picture is. And so what he said was, you should be striving to eat a fruit from the garden, because when you eat your apple, whatever you eat, at the end of your consumption are seeds. and you get to plant those seeds, and other people, it produces more fruit, and other people get to eat. And so your consumption actually has a replenishment component to it. When you strive to eat from a garden that always continues to grow when people take care of it, right? But when you eat from a slice of the pie is prepared. And because it's prepared in this circle, it's limited in its potential to be able to grow bigger, to be able to feed more people. But there's nothing at the core of your consumption that actually allows you to play a massive role in the replenishment of other people being able to eat too. And y'all, when I say that, oh, like rearrange all the furniture in my head of like, yes, strive to eat from like a massive, amazing garden that your consumption, because you have, like when you have gifts and talents and you are stepping boldly into the pocket of your genius, you have to be well fed as a result of that. If not, you begin to resent what your innate talents and abilities are. And I don't think people talk about that enough, right? Yes, you sacrifice to get there, but there's a point where like those sacrifices, those late nights, those early mornings, like everything that you said no to so that you can get to a point where you can say yes to any and everything that you want, at some point you have to get to a point of payoff. And that payoff cannot be rooted in guilt of feeling that because you were winning, it's at the expense of someone else. And so, like, there's so many lessons to be gleaned from what he said in that moment of just reframing a thought process about what is actually possible, how you can be well fed off of your genius, but your family can be well fed off of your genius, right? And your ability and your success. And you're getting to a point where you get to consume, right? Where things aren't just constantly being extracted from you, you actually get to consume. And so you should be well fed. Your family should be well fed. Your community should be well fed. Your industry that you're in should be well fed. The world should be able to be well fed as a result of not only like the seeds that you plant, right? But like your consumption actually produces more from others. And it's such a powerful thing. I feel like I could just end the live like there because you can literally just think through there, right? And so like thinking through that conversation, thinking through like, you reap what you sow and you plowing and like all the biblical senses of that, but then also understanding that like you don't you don't you don't reap when you immediately sow, right? It's a how process and then it becomes a when process for you. But like the other thing that I was thinking about is even with like what we do with Black Ambition, right? Like there's 101 entrepreneurs that we've invested in. And for all the people that have been DMing me, the application opens at the end of the month for the fourth year of the prize. It opens at the end of the month. Just I will make the announcement when, and so will we on the Black Ambition page. And so when you think people are often talking about, planting seeds in order to produce fruit. But there's a step in there because you want whatever you do today to benefit others, right? You want to be building a legacy so that when you leave this earth, like the impact of the work that you were doing today, the world is going to be different 25, 50, 100, 200 years from the work that you were doing today. And honestly, if you cannot say, like definitively say, the world is going to be different in 50 to 100 years based off of the work that you're doing today, you got to recalibrate exactly what you're doing because your contributions have to be significant enough. And maybe sometimes not in this moment if you're just starting out, but like your vision towards what it's going to turn into has to be big enough that the world is going to be different as a result of your time here, your fingerprint, your footprint. It has to be. And like that has to be the core of like your vision. And when people say like, your vision, if your dream doesn't include others, it's not big enough, which is what Ava DuVernay says, one of my favorite quotes. But like, if that thing don't scare you, it's not big enough by a long shot. It's not going to be impactful enough by a long shot. And you got to paint the vision bigger than you are even in this moment, the person that can like work towards that. Not crazy, but that's how big and audacious the vision has to be. And then you lay the steps of saying, well, how am I going to get there? And so the reason I brought up the 100 seeds is most time we say like, hey, I'm going to plant 100 seeds. I planted 100 seeds, so I'm going to get 100 pieces of fruit. And that's actually not the normal like form of nature, right? Like you plant 100 seeds to grow 100 trees. And so you get exponential growth as a result of sowing, right? It's like it's not from seeds to fruit. That's not how things work. It's actually you plant the seeds to grow the trees or grow the bushes. And then there's an exponential impact that happens as a result of the initial seeds that you plant. Because you can plant 100 seeds and actually grow 1,000 pieces of fruit because there's an exponential multiplier effect to what you actually do. And so it was like, it's been a lot of conversations around that. Yes, not all trees will root, but girl, follow me here on this. You know what I'm talking about, right? Um, Not all trees root, right? Of course, not all trees grow fruit, but I think the majority of what we do, if you have a vision of working on things that are much bigger than yourself and having a multiplier effect as a result of that, it is going to reap way more than what you initially put into it. It has to. It always does in some form of or another. And so that got me thinking, like that was just like some morning like conversations yesterday. And then we did the panel with Allie from Village Capital, CEO of Village Capital, Damon Johns, and then we had our entrepreneurs pitch. And then I went into a session with Stedman Graham, like the GOAT, right? And he had some really interesting things to say too that I thought were just a really cool addition to just like, when you just have some of those days where it's just like lesson upon lesson, some things that you had just been like muddling over in your head, and then like you get this one line, and then everything just kind of clicks about either like direction that you need to go in, other thought processes that you need to have around it. It's just been a 2 weeks of that. But yesterday, what day are we on? Wednesday? It's a blur. Everything just kind of clicked in a really interesting way. And so all of that kind of comes back to if you're painting this really big vision, you have to oftentimes the vision that you were painting, you are not the person that's equipped to um, you know, complete that assignment in the moment that the assignment is assigned to you, right? But there is understanding the assignment, which is a journey within itself. And then there is the road to completing the assignment. And many of us have to become the person that can actually say yes to the assignment, acknowledge and understand what the assignment is a process within itself, and then set out on this road to being uninterrupted and unapologetic about any and everything that you need to complete that assignment. And for some of us, we have one big audacious assignment throughout our life, and others, there's multiple assignments that we have, right? And Donia said growth is absolutely required. And like once that vision or that assignment is bestowed upon you, there's this like I think some of us go through this like existential crisis around, well, do I want to accept this because I have to start moving different, being potentially around different people in order to become the person that can achieve like whatever this goal or whatever this thing has been bestowed upon me. And that can be it can be extremely heavy sometimes. Like you have to become a whole new freaking person. Thank you, Black Tina, who said that. You have to become a whole new different person. And that doesn't mean burning bridges. And it doesn't mean like becoming fake or anything like that. That is definitely not what I'm saying. But you have to grow into the person that can absolutely accept that assignment, weather the storm of all the things that are going to come along your way that are going to challenge you, to either become the person and continuously become the person that can do it, continues to question why you should be doing it. And that's when people say, like, your why has to be strong, because in those moments when you are wavering or your conviction is wavering about going along this path, you always got to get back to like that source of why you're doing it to begin with. And so like that part is extremely, extremely helpful as well. And then you just got to become the person, right? And so two things I want to share from like this process that Stedman took us through, because he's a big person, and I think the name of his book is Identity something. I'm gonna find it. Latest book, but one of the first steps in like his 9 steps of success was identity, right? And kind of shifting to that identity of how you define yourself. And he went on to tell these stories, and I'm really gonna kinda just share with you what I felt and how I processed it once he said certain things. And so when he said, "When you don't know who you are, the world will define you, by your circumstances, by your limitations, and then at some point by your relationships," right? And I just, like, I think about that so much, and then there's other things. People will define you by your race, whether it's the positives of your race or the negatives of your race. But at the end of the day, people do not see you through their eyes. They see you through your eyes, right? They do not see you through they never see you through their eyes. They always see you through your eyes. And so when you talk about identity, it's about, sometimes people say it's not about what is it, what they call you, it's about what you respond to as well, right? And so when he was talking about identity, he talked about those areas, right? And I think about one, like my upbringing with my parents, a Jamaican mom, my dad is American from Georgia. I remember like being defined in high school by my GPA. I had a 2.1 GPA after my freshman year of high school. I could do the work. I want to do the work. I still don't like formal class. Like, I read more than I've ever read in my entire life. Probably what I read in a month is probably more than I read in my 4 years of high school, right? But I was a kinesthetic learner. I love working with my hands. And my classroom environment did not allow for that, or give me creative freedom for that. And so I just loved exploring. And so I did all these things outside of school that should have been a part of the equation of what would turn into a very, like, really interesting but successful career by most standards, right? But that never portrayed itself in a GPA. So my GPA was a 2.1, but I was like a big sister with thousands of hours. I was on 5 sports teams in high school. I was in an organization called SECME, which was like the science engineering thing, and I would travel around. Like, I just loved doing those stuff, and that's how I learned. But for the majority of my time in high school, my identity was attached to my GPA, to the point where it's just like dropout prevention classes. I was like, they didn't know my mother. There was no dropping out of anything, right? Um, but if you let people define you, they will define you by your limitations as opposed to your opportunities and where you can go, and your passion, your heart, and your vision. And that's why you always got to communicate what your vision is to people, whether they have the capacity to understand it or not. You just have to. Because if not, if you don't say anything, they will define you by your obstacles first, which is something Travian Shorter talks about all the time. And then at a certain point in long, you get defined by your career, and you get defined by your progress and your potential and your accolades and things like that. But for the most part, you got to tell people who you are the same way you got to tell people and teach people how to treat them. And then what you respond to, I think, also becomes a part of your identity, at least the forward facing identity. And so you got to know who you are. Like, at your core, you have to know who you are. And this has nothing to do with job titles. This is the essence of who you are. You have to take the time to define that. And so sometimes the question is, without my job titles or without any of the hats that you wear as a mother, a father, a sister, a brother, coworker, a CEO, a whatever title that you have in your company, like, who are you? When the door is closed, when you've taken a shower, when you've put on your pajamas, when you're just sitting there by yourself with your thoughts, who are you? And what conversation are you having with yourself? And I think that is the basis for all of this, right? Is who are you at your core? What is the essence of who you are? I think back to being a C student and it feeling like this debilitating thing. And it just did. And I remember hearing this quote, and I didn't hear this quote until I think I graduated high school. I don't remember when I heard this quote. Um, but I believe it was Sir Ken Isaacson, Sir Ken Robinson, phenomenal, phenomenal TED Talk. Y'all please go watch that. Changed my whole thought process about my entire high school experience. And I was like, okay, I could be defined by being a C student, as in like I don't know, just meeting standards or whatever the description is of like the C grade, right? Or that C could mean something completely different to me. And when I wrote my book, it was just like C means creativity. I got very creative with limited resources. So it could be that. But the quote that he said which is actually a Albert Einstein quote, is if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life feeling that it's stupid. I'm gonna say that again because it's literally one of my favorite quotes. If you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its entire life feeling like it's stupid. And so if you don't know who you are, and if you don't know your identity, this world is designed. This world is literally designed to tell you who you are. And if you aren't like steadfast and build almost like a fortress around your identity, you will assume any and everything that is thrown at you. You will assume that you are the highest of everything that is crappy, and you will assume that you are the lowest of everything that is good. If you don't know who you are, if you don't define it, and then if you don't defend it, and then if you don't communicate it, right? And so you have to you not only have to identify it, you then have to communicate it, and then you got to protect the hell out of it. Because the world will tell you who you are. And that goes across everything, right? That goes across if you're building a company and you feel like it's valuated at a certain, I mean, sometimes people with crazy valuations, but like if you in your heart believe that the value of the thing that you were bringing is that value, you got to protect that. If you believe the value of this relationship that you're in, whether it's a friendship or a partnership, business partnership or a life partnership, is like you have identified what the identity of that thing is, what it means to you, what its value is for you, and what the value is for the marketplace. You got to define that and you got to protect that. Like you have to. And if not, you will keep getting these things that kind of sort of look like what you kind of sort of want things to be, but it's never it. Because it doesn't truly align with who you are, what your identity is, what you want to put out into the world. You're all over the place. Your body is all like misaligned. And because you don't identify who you are, you become like, you ever put like a cup of water in the fridge and you leave it in there overnight, right? Pure water in a clean glass, you put it in the fridge. And then you come back like the next day or 2 days later and like the water usually has a smell, right? It moves from the form and fluidity of literally what it is, right? Substance. Like it keeps us alive. I think you can only go 30 days without water or something like that, right? Like it literally keeps us alive. It has all the powers to really like shape nations, right? Shape us. Like I'm looking out, it's been raining in San Diego, but I'm looking at a body of water, and I love going like, when I am stressed, frustrated, I really need to think. I mean, I live in Miami, so it's easy for me to go to the beach. And I like going to the beach because I can look out and see a real life manifestation of what abundance is, meaning that there are no barriers, there are no bounds. I can't see nothing on the other side but pure ocean and bodies of water, because that's the power of it. That's the fluidity of it. It turns into all these alternative states. You can freeze it, you can boil, like, it's malleable to the sense that it can literally become and build or destruct any and everything, right? But what I'm getting back to is, if you put a cup of water in the fridge, you come back a day or the next day, um, what it starts to do is it starts to the smell changes, and it starts to assume all the smells of everything that is in that refrigerator with it. And the identity of it changes. Yes, it's still a cup of water, but now all these other factors, it has literally become a sponge of all these other factors that are surrounding it. Why? Because you didn't put a top and a container on it to protect it. So it starts assuming all these other things. And then if there's things floating around, if you've ever left a cup of water on a table and come back for it a few days, there's all these things that have dropped into it, like dust particles, maybe a bug got a little too close and now it's floating in there, and it's that, like, it changes its form. And we are like that. We have the ability to be fluid. We have the ability to be solid. We can reach our boiling point and get hot. We can also be cold. We can be complementary. We can be nourishing. We can be any of those things if they are a part of our essence and a part of our identity. But we can easily be affected by just sitting there if we don't define who we are and if we don't put a container on it and protect things. I feel like I've gone in a whole other direction than what I was planning to go through today. Um, and so I wanted to take you through that. And then I got reminded I often talk about value because I hate when people say, pay me what I'm worth. I was like, please, 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 for the life of me, stop saying that. It is the worst thing that you can say, and it's misaligned, and it makes you feel like crap, because there's nobody that can put a price on your worth. Are you kidding me? Why would you say that? Why would you ask for that? And furthermore, because you were asking for that is the reason why you can't set your pricing, why you can't set your evaluation, why you were asking people that have no ability, because they are human beings, to assess that. Stop it. I don't know what your religion is, what your spiritual practice, but there is only one being that can put a value on my worth and my worthiness. There's only one, and there's nobody on this human earth. No one. And so it's the wrong question. It's the wrong statement. And because it's such a big and powerful statement, although we are, whatever you're charging, right? It's such a big and powerful statement. It makes you so uneasy that you don't understand the value that you are putting out into the marketplace. And that's the real question that you should be asking. How much should I be paid for the value that I put out into the marketplace? Not my worth and my worthiness. That shouldn't even ever be associated with your time, because time is not money. Time is never money. Time is infinitely more valuable than money. It always has. It always, always, always will be. Money can be earned back. It can be lost, of course. Yes, it can be lost, right? I know that well. But it can be reprinted. It can be gained back. But when someone wastes your time, you don't ever get that back. And so time and money are both energy exchanges, but one is way more expensive than the other. And the time and the energy of the time that you spend on doing certain things or not do certain things is aligned with your worthiness. And so that's why it has such a high value, and there's an uneasiness to putting a price on that because it's the most expensive commodity that you have. But we do have to work, and we do have to make money, and we do have to build wealth for generations that come after us, for the privilege that we have to be on this earth in the moment that we're in, with all the sacrifices of our families and our ancestors that come before us. But the question that you ask yourself around value is, am I putting out value into the marketplace? And you know what? One way to begin to assess that is knowing who you are, knowing what your genius is. So if you have not done the genius, like Genius Jam framework or Gay Hendricks Big Leap Genius Quadrant, his has 4 steps, mine has 7. Find that video on my thing, go through it because it really helps you understand what your genius is and how your genius aligns with your identity, because your genius is the essence of who you are. It shows up at the highest level in everything that you do. And as a result of that, you get compensated at the highest level because you were in your zone of genius and you contribute at that high level without expending yourself because you were in a flow state. Japanese call that the kaizen state. It's your flow state. So go back. If you've never done that, I do a training on that, but like I have dropped so many in-depth, almost masterclass like videos on that on my IG, but then also on my YouTube, which is literally the same name. But go through that because once you know what your identity is, you know what you want to do, what you don't want to do. You know what your genius level is, and you know when you're operating in your zone of incompetence, which is not what you want to do. It's the things that you should never be doing. And then that helps you better assess your time, your energy, and then it helps you better assess your value in the marketplace. And then when you understand what your value in the marketplace is, then you create something called leverage. Um, when you create something called leverage, you can either leverage that, right, for current gains, or you build it up and you leverage it for future gains. It's depending on what you plan to do, but that's also tied with your identity. Freedom is a part of your identity. What freedom means for you and what freedom means for me are two completely different things. And so you also have to identify, well, what does freedom mean? And please don't worry if you are driving or anything, I will save this live. I haven't done a live, I think, in all of 2024. And so I'm going to ramp back up now that like there's a little bit more sanity to my schedule. And I overcame COVID, which I had in January, that just really, really sucked. And as you can hear, you might be able to hear, my voice keeps going in and out, which just sucks because anyways, for a number of reasons. But mostly because I use my voice because it's my genius, right? And so I've been working on just kind of really good health practices and just kind of getting that back like across the board. But that's another conversation for another time. And now I forgot what was I talking about, y'all? What was I talking about, Lord? So leveraging, right? For for current opportunities or then future opportunities, right? That's where building your brand comes into place. That's where understanding that your pricing of whatever you do is a part of your brand as well. But you get to build leverage, right? So there's the value that you bring, and then there's a perceived value based off of the needs of the marketplace. That gap from here to here is a massive leverage that you can take advantage of and also build and create, right? And then there's understanding that there's the value that you create, there's understanding the leveraging opportunities from the value that you create, and then there is you becoming the vessel, which I put here, but that's like, right? So value, the perceived value is the leverage, like that gap between where you are and the perceived value based off of the needs of whoever you were talking to, pitching to, putting out into the marketplace that need the thing that you need. There's a sense of urgency. And because there's a sense of urgency, like where you are here becomes up here for them. Well, they'll pay more. That's a whole other class situation, right? But follow me on this. And then there is you becoming the vessel, which is tied to your essence. And when you become the vessel, the thing cannot happen without you. And because the thing cannot happen without you, it gives you massive leverage in the identity that you created that is tied to whatever value you put out in the marketplace, no matter what industry you were in. What do I mean by that? When you become the vessel, right? Vessels are like a tube. And I mean, there's a lot of examples of vessels, right? There's the starting point, there's the ending point, and there's a through line to get to one point to the next. When you fully understand your identity and your value within the marketplace, you get to a point where the thing that people want can't happen unless they work with you. They can't happen unless they go through you. And this isn't like gatekeeper stuff, but I do need to have a gatekeeper conversation at some point. I'll figure that out. This is not gatekeeper. This is value. I cannot get to this next level of what I'm doing unless I use this person, I work with this person. It becomes like the highest level of value when you understand like the vessel that you are. The thing happens with you. It may happen without you, but it'll take much longer. The pathway will be much more painful. It doesn't financially make sense. It doesn't logically make sense unless we use this person, unless we work with this person. And when you can show people that you are the vessel, the thing don't happen without you. It cannot happen without you in the way that they need to happen without you. Then you become irreplaceable. Then there is like really no cap on what you can charge for your thing. And then people infinitely understand the value that you have in the marketplace because the thing cannot happen without you. And so value, leverage, and then vessel. And you need all three of those things. And all three of them play a role individually, but they also play a role and they're kind of connected and interconnected, if that makes any sense, right? And you're constantly kind of building upon each other. You become the vessel, you become more valuable, right? You understand your value that leads to the leverage that leads to the vessel. When you have more leverage, you are building a much deeper vessel, right? Where more things can't happen as a result without you being a part of. I think it's if you've ever watched the Black Godfather, which is what I made Norman my mentee and my production travel assistant. He got a lot of titles now. I made him watch it because I didn't want him to overthink what he. I didn't want him to overthink where he's trying to go. And I think that one, that guy's story is so amazing, but two, it signifies in a very vivid way and a very easy and practical way what it means when you become the vessel that is a connector of dots, a connector of people that want to do business, need to do business together, right? But do not understand how they can bring it together. Do not understand how they can put whatever they have aside. You literally become the vessel that connects these two things that should go move together, join budgets together, join opportunity. Like you are the glue. You are the glue. And if you are not there to piece the things together, they do not happen for the greater impact of whatever it is people are ultimately trying to achieve. Become the vessel. By becoming the person that can do the thing that does the personal work to understand the value that you bring to your life, your family, the marketplace. Understanding that when you are the vessel and you leverage and you understand your value, that you plant seeds that not only just grow fruit, but they grow trees that grow tall and long and infinitely produce fruit. So there's a multiplier effect to you becoming the vessel. But you got to become the person that can do the thing. And that is by intention that changes, knowing what your intention is, that changes your behavior. Your behavior then changes your habits. Your habits then change your daily practice of how you do it because experts and really amazing people, you think of NFL, NBA, any sports player, they practice multiple times a day. Even if they have 80 games, that's 80 days, but they're practicing all the other days of the year, close to what, I don't know, 200 plus, 250 plus days of the year. I know that math is wrong, but y'all gonna follow me, right? And so they practice more than they actually play. And then there is, and Brandon Burchard talks about this, right? So the intention, the behavior, the habit, the practice, the nature, and then you become. And he says nature, and I get why he says nature, but I feel like nurture is the better word, because in the nurturing is where you build the fortress that protects this thing that you were on, protects this intention, protects that assignment, protects the journey. And so there's a nurturing that you have to do, just like when we nurture kids. We don't just kind of throw them to the wild. We take care of them. We teach them. We feed them. We bathe them. We house them. We clothe them. That's all a part of a nurturing process to protect them, because we know at one point they're going to get old enough where they got to go out into this world. And if we haven't nurtured them and protected them and given them an armor to go out into the world is going to eat them alive. We know that. And so in the same instance of our dreams, and our intentions and our genius and our vision, we got to protect them things as well. And then then you get to a point where you become the person that can infinitely and always do the thing. And then you start the process all over again in any and all hats that you wear. Because if you do that in the professional sense, well, then you got to do that in your marriage. And you got to do that as a part of parenthood. And you got to do that to be a good steward of like the legacy that your family is leaving you. Like it goes across any and all things. The difference between worth and value, no human being can determine my worth. Only higher power can, but only I can know my own value based off of knowing myself and being very clear. Hate that I couldn't have gone through the comments the way that I wanted to, but I went on a little bit of a rant. But it was necessary. It was the vessel. It had to kind of come out. And so talk to y'all later.